Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and you're watching The Broken Meeple. This is a YouTube channel about board games where I give reviews, top 10s and my honest opinions, regardless of the consequences. We'll get on with the show in just a minute, but first a quick word from my sponsor. As a fellow gamer, you'll understand this is unacceptable. The solution? Head down to my new sponsor, Kiender.co.uk. Kiender stocks many of the hot new releases as well as some old hidden gems. Free delivery on orders over £30, further discounts on bulk purchases, and even 5% of your spending refunded back to you as points to be used for further discounts down the line. If you use the referral link in the description below and sign up for a new account, you'll get 5% discount on your first order over £60. So let's make gaps in your collection a thing of the past. Get down to Kiender and start saving today. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the video.
Get on with it.
So today I'm taking a look at Age of Rome. I believe this is a deluxe version of a new game released from Teetotum Studios. Thank you for the review copy. And this one I saw at Essen, but never really got a chance to dive into it. So this one is a bit of a late arrival in my books. This one intrigued me though because of one of the mechanisms that it has. Essentially, each player is responsible to begin with for one of their districts out of 4, which they can build buildings which allow them to do more powerful actions. But the thing with these districts is that once you finish a round, the board rotates, and so in the next round you're responsible for a different district. And it could be one, with less players it could be one that hasn't been built on at all, but ideally with 4 players it's going to be one that someone else has built up. And you know ahead of time which way it's going to turn and how much. So you're aware that somebody else is going to get a district you're about to work on, and you're thinking about, well, do I want to build this so that they can use that? And what am I going to get? Oh, I'm going to get that piece of rubbish over there. And it's an interesting little dynamic, but that I had not seen in many games, and I figured, you know what, this is something that I need to try out and see if it is. And it's also a new publisher, so it's a bit of a sort of debut game for them. So again, new faces on the block, new kids on the block, shall we say. And I wanted to see if it could, stand the test. Can it do well for a first game from a new publisher with an interesting little concept? Well, let's find out. So as I mentioned, Age of Rome is about controlling these districts. So in a round, you flip over one event card that will tell you a particular event that you have to follow and what direction this board is going to turn. You will be in charge of your specific board. So let's just say this one is facing me for reasons. And you have money, you have other items that you might be able to use from other cards, from trading. But for the most part, it's a case of, I've got some money, do I want to build a building here? Well, you've got a lot of very cool looking acrylic buildings here, which if I can get the cover off, you can basically decide, you know what, I want to build a level 1 military building. So in it goes and it's upgraded. I get points. It costs more money to upgrade, but it allows you to place one of your workers on said space in order to trigger the action associated with that building. Military, politics, trade, and so forth. Each one having a different action, like say area control on the military side down here, putting your votes tiles on the center column here for politics, which we'll get onto the theming a bit later, but essentially another type of way to score points. You can potentially build up your Parthenon pieces on your sideboard in order to get points that way, or you can simply just draw trade cards, which are essentially these green cards here, and it's mostly for set collection as well as potential special abilities if you play the card for its effect. You've also got a couple of other methods to score points, such as quest cards that you've drawn at the start of the game and might draw more of as the game goes on. And in terms of some of the interaction, there's an essence of screwage in that you are able to lay down schemes from your player board, which if I find a player board example, we have one fiat, of which there are several, and the scheme tokens basically allow you to, do things to other players, like maybe kill off one of their Parthenon pieces or get in their way. But what you're essentially doing is plugging up their little board here in order that they don't get the special bonuses that might apply to certain actions. Like Levia here, for example, is very good at trade and politics, sucks a bit at the military. Well, I don't want to be schemed against because then I lose my bonus to trade. And the rest of it is just that there are pieces on your board and you'll unlock them as the game goes on. But as the game carries on, these districts are more and more lucrative. So you'll gain money at the end of each round based on how many buildings are there. And you know where it's going to rotate. So next time I'm going to get this one. What do I do with this one this turn? And this carries on for 9 rounds. And of course, once you get to the end, total up the victory points. And guess what happens to the person who's got the most?
Of course!
So certainly from a production standpoint, this is insane. I mean, the retail version of this is still pretty damn good, okay? This is a deluxe copy of it, which is not cheap. You're certainly paying quite a bit for this one, especially if you got it at Essen. But you have got this rotating board, which essentially you plug it up with this like little disc in the middle, and it revolves around nice and easily. That's in the normal game. You've got little game trays with wooden pieces that are organized for your particular area. You've got an insert at the bottom of the box to hold this board and various other components. You also have the acrylic buildings, which are really cool. I'll have to double check if they are in the retail version, but certainly in this deluxe version it is nice to get these things because it's like a clear overlay that you put over these, and it gives that kind of visual impression of the areas being built up. You've even got metal coins in this particular set, and you get a little pouch for these, and metal coins are always a good thing. So you are certainly getting a very nice looking game here, and it will turn heads and it will really pop on Instagram photos. But like I said, this is the deluxe version and it does cost a pretty penny. The component quality is a bit less than the retail version, but not by much. It's not a massive drop down, and certainly it's still going to look really good. It's still got this vibrant artwork and everything. So honestly, looks wise for a first game, that's pretty good going.
You good looking. You're hot.
The game is also quite a simple one to learn. The rulebook may look big, but the first 8 pages are literally just, components and some background on some of these characters. So, that bit doesn't really count. But then you've got the full setup diagram with numbered areas. And even though it looks like there's a decent amount of rules in here, for the most part it's illustrations. There's not a huge amount of text in here, which is kind of what a rulebook should be. Not just wall after wall of text. Give me pictures. In fact, this one I dare say almost goes to the extreme of being a little bit too illustrative, because you'll have a thing about schemes and how they work, and then it will have this whole page devoted to examples about how they work, like every potential example. Having an FAQ for this game I think is going to be nigh on impossible, because this book goes into so much detail trying to explain how something works with every possible scenario that you shouldn't have an FAQ moment. So really, learning this game is quite easy. It certainly isn't pick up and play, and there's definitely an element of complexity to it, but the rulebook does a damn good job of explaining things, and I think very rarely did I have to find myself referencing the book. I think once I got it down, I got it down. So fair play to you, and that goes as well for the solo mode, which is contained in its own little book. Not a difficult solo mode to do, and as I say, this may look like a lot of pages, but this is the solo mode rules, and all of this is just simply an example game. Like an example game or example turns played out with a solo mode in it. So, gotta give them credit. I would rather take the extreme of explaining things too much than not explaining things enough.
That's easy!
If you're looking for interaction in your Euro, this one does a pretty good job of portraying it. Not every action in the game is particularly interactive. If you want to gain money with the farms or do trade cards, that doesn't really affect other players much. But you do butt heads with the military area control, as well as the politics, I suppose you could call it area control. You're effectively stacking them up, and if you can get a set of 3, you get points, but everybody's kind of chipping in, and then it wipes out the one at the bottom once you get to a stack of 5. So this thing's constantly changing, this thing's probably constantly shifting. But those are the 2 out of the 5 actions where you're actually caring about the opponent. Where you really do care about the opponent, though, is twofold. The schemes, where depending on where the scheme is on the board after it rotates round is what player it's going to affect, but mainly just the whole concept of this rotating board is interaction in itself, because I know what board I'm going to have next round. I also know who's going to get my board at the end of this round, and all those things have to be considered, because there's no point me building a building that's so good for the person after me and not as good for me. It's like, well, hang on, I don't want to give this person loads of extra, I don't want to give this person a military action, because if he do, he's going to block me on this space. And you know what? No military building for you. But then you're going to get a board where somebody has built it quite highly on the trade side. It's like, well, maybe I can do something with trade then, but for now I need to work on this. Oh, he doesn't have any politics buildings. Right, maybe I should do a politics now, knowing that I'm not going to get it in a minute. There's a few elements like that you have to think about, and this game does. Even though it's got a simplistic rule book, it's still got quite a few areas of complexity with regards to what you're thinking about, because you are considering what other players could build, what they want to be built, and what their potential scupper actions are doing. Somebody's trying to scupper you on the politics. Well, maybe you don't want to give them a politics building next round. There's little things to consider, and it does generate a little bit of AP now and again, but for the most part, it's still a relatively smooth affair. The game also has a solid arc in which it starts off being like, I've only got one worker and I just do one building, that's it. You know, you don't feel that you do very much in the first couple of rounds, but it does quickly ramp up, and by the time you get to the later rounds, particularly the sort of rounds 7, 8 and 9, you are doing quite a lot. I mean, you may have unlocked most of your followers, in which case you've got like a good 5 or 6 different actions that you can perform in a turn. All these places will have been built up with these different buildings that can use multiple workers, like, you know, a level 3 military building can use 3 separate workers to do military. And at that point, you're generating more money to build better buildings, and it does feel like as you get to the end of the game, the stuff that you have been doing earlier on mattered, and you get to play around with more stuff. Now, this will have a knock-on effect, as I'll get into in a minute, but it does mean that the game isn't linear. It means that it's also, you know, not quite a, like, oh, you know, this is a predictable thing that will happen. It's like, no, depending on what other players do, this game will lead to some very different styles of games, depending on what people build. You know, if people go really heavy on the politics thing, then, well, the place is going to be littered with politics buildings, but nobody really built much in the military section. Well, that's going to be hard then. So when are we actually going to get to do a military action? Suddenly that action is a lot more valuable than some of the other ones. And cool little twists like that just make this a little bit more interesting. But it's not all perfect, and there are flaws. Let's go on to probably my biggest flaw first, actually. This is the thing that kind of irks me a bit too much. There's something in games that I really don't like. I tend to roll my eyes when I see this because it usually feels like a lazy mechanic that's thrown in to add a randomizer when you don't need one. Well, the randomizer in this is the event deck, and this one is a little bit of a problem because this event deck, you deal out 9 of them for a game, so you've got 9, 1 for each round. You flip it over at the start, it has an effect which usually affects everybody possibly, and then it tells you what you're going to twist the board. So left, right, anti-clockwise, clockwise, 180 degrees, 90 degrees, whatever. But the problem with these events is that I don't mind the fact that the directions it turns is randomized, because you can play a variant where you turn it clockwise, you know, 90 degrees every single turn. So if you want the strategic element, you can do that. But I'm actually cool with the fact that I don't necessarily know if it's going to go back and forth between 2 players and that. But the events are very swingy in how they work, because they typically say like players with the most of this or players with the fewest of this, but you don't know what's going to happen, so it's entirely random as their effects, and they can be pretty important things. I mean, saying that, you know, players with the fewest money win 1 money per recruited follower. Well, that can suddenly propel the person in last place on that front, you know, to Lord knows when. And it's not that these necessarily help who's in last place, it's normally who has the least of a particular thing. So, you know, where we got here, yeah, players with the fewest victory points on their Parthenon, minimum 1 piece built, win 1 money per recruited follower. Well, my whole strategy might be in something else, and I'm doing really well, and I'm probably going to win. This card just gave me even more money, so the rich just got richer. I honestly do not like event decks, and I don't think this one works either, but you can house rule this, because there's nothing stopping you from simply ignoring the event and only caring about the direction on the card. And honestly, I think that's going to be the way I play this game from now on. I don't think I ever want to use the event deck for its swinginess and just the sort of like, you know, occasionally helps the wrong person. But if you want to play the strategic and just do the 90-degree thing, fine. I, for one, am just going to ignore the text and refer to the arrows, and that usually does me fine.
You can't do that! Hey, you can't do that!
And here's the other big issue, the player scaling. The player scaling in this game doesn't quite work. You can play this solo, 2, 3 or 4 player. Honestly, I think this game has only 1 player count. 4. And it's not often that I would say play with the most players, but here I think you have to play with 4. I just think it works out better, because if you play this with 2 players, you're only looking at 1 board apiece, which means that as the game goes on, a couple of these provinces are going to build up a lot quicker than a couple of the others, and one of them might not get touched at all. And, you know, you can play a co-op against the AI, but, you know, if you're looking for a competitive game, 2 players I just don't think works that well, although some people have said differently. 3 player definitely doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't make for the game to be horrible, but if you've got 1 person, 2 person, 3 person building up these and 1 left over, then imagine that you flip those event cards and 1 person, you know, ends up with a situation where the board goes 1, back, 1, back, let's say it does that 3 or 4 times in a row, which it can do pretty easily. That means that that person has got one province that isn't being built up by others. So they're having noticeably weaker turns than the others who are on provinces that have been built up every single round. So 3-player doesn't work. Solo feels very much like a 2-player. Now, you know, I'm in charge of this bit, and occasionally other bits get built up. Again, it just feels like a 2-player, and I don't think it works well there. But this game shines at its best with 4, because you want everybody on a province. You want somebody to be working on a province every round. Whether they do it optimally or not is down to them, but at least every province gets something every round, and so this game is just tailor-made for 4 players, and I don't think I would ever want to play it with less, at least not ideally. But this leads into another issue, because when you have that many players, the game length goes a little bit off the scale, because this one claims on the box somewhere it's like a 60-minute game. Yeah, good luck with that. 60 minutes, I guess, if you play it solo. And even then you need to know what you're doing and not check rules or anything like that. Yeah, so you might be able to do it in 60. But no, you're looking at bare minimum a 90-minute game here, and this can easily go on to 2 hours. That's pretty long for a game that's not that complex in terms of its rule set, just has a, you know, an only 9 rounds. I think that's just going a little bit too far, particularly if you're teaching this to new players and they kind of AP over the options and they're not entirely certain what they should do on a round. You're easily looking at 90 to 120 minutes for a typical 3 to 4 player game. If you're lucky, maybe you could cut it down to 75, but you would have to have some very speedy players, and it's just crossing a line where I think it goes on a bit too long. But the problem is, if you play with less players, you've got less of a game, so you've got to kind of decide which do you prefer. Do you want the 4 players but you go with the extra length, or do you play a lesser game with less players but you know, curb the length down? I'm at that point where we're like, you know, okay, fine, I'll deal with the fact that it's a longer game, I'll play this with 4, but still I wish it was a little bit quicker. The theme is also a little bit on the abstracted side. I mean, artwork-wise, looks great for the setting that it's trying to do. I mean, that is a fantastic looking cover. You know, it's a great, you know, these player boards, dual recess with the big portrait are really cool. The board is an Instagrammer's wet dream. I mean, seriously, the pictures I put up with Instagram for this looked gorgeous when you put them through. So visually, looks amazing. The theme is kind of very abstracted though, and I was kind of hoping that a bit more of the theme would come out of this game, but it is a very dry affair. In fact, this kind of worried me at first when I was playing it. The first impression I got when I read the rules and saw what this kind of all was of Trajan. Trajan is a Stefan Feld game, which is basically just a bunch of mini games all thrown together to see what happens. I really don't like Trajan. Trajan is not a game I like, and I was worried I was going to get the same level of hatred here. Thankfully, no, the mini-games here are a lot more simpler, but they are essentially mini-games. You know, the military is basically just put a guy on an area, and if you've got the most, you get 10, if you've got the second most, you got 5. I mean, that's all it really is. You can move them about, but that's it. There's no other weird combat rules. The whole politics thing. Politics is basically putting these little discs on the central stack and trying to get 3 in a row so that you score points, or trying to end up with your one in the middle and one at the very bottom in order to score the most points in the stack. I don't know why the middle is so important but the other bits aren't. And so the politics, I mean, it's no voting or anything, it's just literally a stack of tokens, so that's a little bit abstracted. And then everything else, I mean, the farms is literally just gain income, nice and quick. The trade is literally just taking cards and trying to collect sets. I mean, there's no actual trade between players or anything. And what's the other one? The Parthenon piece. You literally just build the Parthenon on a little sideboard next to your thing. You build it, it looks visually interesting, but that's it. It just scores various points per piece you shove down. That's kind of all it is. So the theme is neither really here or there. If you are hoping for a thematic, like Rome setting with all the stuff that comes with it, you're not going to get it here. This is essentially a bunch of mini games with a cohesive narrative of moving the board around and twisting it there. But yeah, it is essentially mini games. So Age of Rome does have some interesting quirks to it. They tried something new and the concept is cool, and I do like this aspect of rotating the board and working on something that other people have done. That element is pretty sweet. It is well produced, whether it's retail or deluxe. I mean, particularly if it's deluxe. A couple of little minor niggles with some of the pieces and that, but you know, nothing major. You know, other than that, everything else looks gorgeous art-wise and component-wise. The main things that do hurt this game, and they do hurt it quite badly, are those events, which I do think kill some of the enjoyment in the game, but they are easily house ruled. But for the main part, the player scaling is just a bit of an issue, because solo is fine, but I don't think this is a game I want to play solo. 2-player, again, I don't like the idea that you're working on not every province at the same time, and 3 players can just end up with a lot of major imbalances, and it's not fun if you're the 3rd player who gets stuck with the rubbish province on a regular basis. It can happen, it's just there with the cards. So maybe you have to play with the strategic variant by, twisting it clockwise round, but then again, turn order, I mean, do you want to get that empty province at the first turn of the game, or do you want to get it 4 turns later? Again, it just feels a little bit imbalanced. So you're kind of restricted to play Age of Rome as a 4-player game only, and then you have the problem that the game kind of takes a little bit too long to finish. So, there's a few things that get in the way of what could have been a really fantastic game. But it's still decent. But I think it's hard to say. Would you pay this much money for this game knowing that you had to pretty much play it with 4 players and it still wasn't necessarily perfect? I think this is a pretty solid debut from this company, but not quite solid enough that I can recommend it for everybody. I think I'm giving this one a high 6 out of 10. I think it's still above average, and it's still something that I have enjoyed playing and would happily play at the 4-player count. And notice my player scaling at the bottom of this video, where you will notice that I actually do consider this to be a 7 out of 10 endorsement rating with 4 players, specifically 4 players. At that level, it works nicely, but I just think it's not quite there with other players, and I can't, as much as I can house rule the event deck, you don't get brownie points for me fixing a design flaw in the game. I'm just saying that is the fix. But it's still an issue with the game, and not everybody likes to house rule things. So it's still an above average game. I can't quite bump it up to a 7 unless you are going to play this with 4 players only, and that is your sole reason for having the game. But as a 4-player game, I do like it and think it works. I just don't think it quite works with less players. But, they've got another one coming out on Kickstarter soon called Restart. That looks pretty sweet, so I'll be interested to check that one out. And as I say, first game, new publisher. So this was an interesting concept, something a bit different. It doesn't fully work, but it does work in some aspects quite nicely, and so I want to see what they come up with next.
It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and thumb it up on Board Game Geek when it goes live on the page. Don't forget to check out all the other content I've been doing this month, mainly my top 100, which is at least 60 games into the top 100, and I'd better get on with doing the next 20 in just a second. So until next time, remember, regardless of which way you want this board to twist on your next turn, it's still only a game, so try not to get too addicted to it, and I'll see you next time.